Today we're going to learn about reflexive pronouns, which are words like myself, yourself, himself, and themselves. We use these pronouns when the subject and the object of the sentence are the same person or thing. In other words, the person who does the action also receives the action. This is very common in English, especially when we talk about daily activities, feelings, and personality. Let's start with the forms. For each subject pronoun, we have a reflexive pronoun. For example, I, myself, you, yourself, he, himself, she, herself, it, itself, we, ourselves, you, plural, yourselves, and they, themselves. It's important to learn these forms because they are irregular, and you need to remember them. Now let's see how we use reflexive pronouns. The most common use is when the subject and the object are the same. For example, I looked at myself in the mirror, or she bought herself a sandwich. In these sentences, the person does the action and also receives it. Another example is he told himself not to worry, or they got themselves some food. This structure is very useful when talking about daily life. We also use reflexive pronouns in expressions like help yourself or help yourselves. This is very common in social situations, for example, at a party or at home. If you say help yourselves, it means people can take food or drinks without asking. For example, there is some dessert on the table, help yourselves. It is a polite and friendly expression. Another important use is with the preposition by, when we want to say that someone is alone or does something alone. For example, I live by myself, she travelled by herself, or they finished the work by themselves. This means there is no help from other people. It is very common when talking about independence or personal situations. We can also use reflexive pronouns for emphasis, to show that someone did something alone, without help. For example, I made this cake myself, he fixed the car himself, or she runs the business herself. In these cases, the reflexive pronoun adds extra importance to the action. Let's connect this to personality vocabulary. For example, you can say, he's very independent because he does everything himself. Or, she's a little bit worried, but she tells herself everything will be fine. You can also say, they enjoyed themselves at the party, which is a very common expression. Other examples are, don't worry yourself too much, or he taught himself how to play the guitar. These sentences help you talk about feelings, behavior, and personality. To finish, remember that reflexive pronouns are used when the subject and object are the same, and they are also used for emphasis and to talk about doing something alone. Try to use them when you talk about your daily life, your feelings, and your personality, and your English will sound more natural and complete.